also justified to tax them because their parents are indeed negligent in this case, because the government had already educated new parents on that you need to go vaccinate your child and why is it good and how to vaccinate your child. And when they choose not to send their child to their vaccination appointment, their parents are indeed negligent. And to ensure that the parents as a reminder to ensure that the parents want to send their child to get vaccinated, we impose this tax. So why is it good that we have this tax into this debate? Because when they are taxed, they would eventually, in the long run, go to send their children to be vaccinated. So the government, by implementing this tax, have achieved the end goal, and that the children itself will have a higher immune system to fight off the diseases that occur that I stated before. And last but not least, the children are less likely to get the disease such as polio, rabies, and even COVID-19. They would be less likely as they already have a higher immune system. So why is it important? Why is it important that these children are sent to be vaccinated by their parents? So it is important first for the parents. It is important that their children is at the best of their health, meaning that they will not lose more money when they are trying to treat their children because of the diseases that can be prevented by having vaccination in the first place, and their child can actually live longer because tons of cases have occurred in past years, in these couple back years, where children are dying because of rabies just by their parents not getting the vaccination. And this vaccination is also important for the children to live a healthy and happy life and not to be discriminated by the society just because what their parents decided on them. So that is all from the government side, proud to propose. Thank you very much.
Thank you. To kickstart opposition's case, I welcome Leader of Opposition. Here.
Should I start now?
Yes, you can start.
Good evening to honorable judges, timekeepers, and members of the floor. This House will implement an anti-vaccination tax on parents who refuse to vaccinate their children. We, as the opposition team, disagrees with the motion. Now, before I put forward my case for today, I would like to rebut several claims made by the government. Now, the government said that we should be believing in science, but science also says that COVID has very low mortality rate, less than 10%, and it has less of a death rate than said, such as rabies and the flu, because also children do not need to have extra care. As I've said, COVID-19 has low mortality rate. They won't die as easily as you would suggest. And also, government is not looking at the people on the lower rung of the social ladder. Because take the people who are in the B40 group. Why would the government want to tax people who do not have the money to pay for the tax? The government say they want to tax the people until they can't pay for the tax anymore. But you're not taking into account the people who cannot afford said tax, because tax costs a lot of money, especially when you need to take account their income, and the people from the B40 group do not have enough income to pay for the tax, because essentially you're forcing these people on the lower rung of the ladder to pay for taxes when they don't even have any money left, until they don't have any money left. And on the other side, rich parents would be able to not vaccinate their children because they can pay for the tax implemented by the government.
POI.
Yes, POI.
You said that the rich will not have to pay, but we already said that the tax will be until they cannot pay, meaning that the rich will be taxed more.
Right. Okay. Let me rephrase. Yes, the rich parents will also have to pay, but But rich parents, they have a lot of assets. Okay, they have a lot of incomes. They can, even if they do have to pay for their money, they don't have enough concern. They don't necessarily need a lot of. They don't have a lot to lose like the people on the B40 group. Okay, the B40 group have a lot to lose. Okay, they have to pay for their houses. They have to pay for their children, and having tax, that would just further burden them. Okay, that would end my claim for that would end my rebuttals for today. Now I'm gonna move on to my arguments. So we have structured our debate as follow. Okay, I, leader opposition, will be delivering my own two arguments against the House. This and my deputy leader of opposition will deliver their own rebuttals against the Prime Minister and also deliver their own arguments against the motion. Now, our opposition whip, however, will be delivering their own arguments to support our case and some our position. Now, I'll be moving on to my first point. My first point is that it violates human rights. Human has a right to deny vaccination. Now, most country vaccination has increasingly become mandatory in many countries, and that is essentially a violation of human rights, because just as it is their own rights to receive healthcare, it is also their own right to deny healthcare, especially parents, because parents are the sole their parents are the people who take care of their children, so they have full rights to what their children are gonna be receiving. So plus, bear in mind also, I would like to reiterate that vaccination has extremely low death rate. It is less than 10%, and it's much less than like, for example, the flu or the rabies. Rabies is extremely high in mortality rate. So there should be, why is the government comparing rabies and COVID-19? In
POI.
fact, COVID-19 will become a norm in everyday's life. People have healthcare experts have said this. It will become a normal thing in everyone's lives. So why is there a need to tax people when when there's no need for, because you're not gonna die from the COVID-19. Well, okay. If we are able to deny medicine, like for example life-saving surgeries, then we should be able to deny said vaccination, especially for our children. So I would say that there is no need to tax people when, there is no need to tax parents when they don't want the vaccination on their children, because COVID-19 is not a huge issue, is not a huge problem in this country, in the entire world in general. So that will conclude my speech for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition. Deputy Prime Minister. Here. Deputy Prime Minister.
Yes, just give me a second.
Okay, no problem. Start whenever you're ready.
All right. Okay, I will start my speech in 3. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, fairness is not. I'll start my. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, fairness is not bending for the ignorance just so that we could respect their choice. Fairness is taking the initiative and the effort to achieve the greater good in order, despite what the ignorant wants, which is why today government is going to propose the motion. But before I move on to my claims, I would like to move on to the rebuttals made by the leader of opposition. First of all, she rebutted the points of my Prime Minister saying that COVID-19 has less mortality rate as compared to other viruses. First of all, if you were to say that less mortality rate does not mean there is no death at all. In fact, so far there's been 6.07 million deaths worldwide and 3.9 million in Malaysia, just in Malaysia. So if you are to say that, oh yeah, it doesn't really matter, less mortality rates, the death occurs anyway. So are you to say that the lives of these millions of people does not matter simply because it's not big? And if you were to say this is solely concentrated on COVID, we have other viruses that also needs to get vaccinated. It is not just a matter of COVID. This motion
PI.
talks about vaccination in general, not just COVID. Accepted.
So just to clarify, we're not trying to say that the low mortality
about
rates are. Yeah, okay. So we're not trying to say that with the low mortality rate means that we're justifying their deaths. It's just that we mean that we're not justifying the whole taxation part of this whole conundrum.
Okay,
So what do you say to that?
Thank you. All right, thank you. So either way, vaccination saves lives, and you are saying that the lesser mortality rates means that it's not that big of an importance for parents to take their children to get vaccinated, right? But that's simply not true, because if you were to say that children aren't vaccinated, then that won't increase the mortality rate. So yeah, usually it's lesser now, but in the long run, it will surely increase. Now, moving on, why do we they say that we want to tax people who cannot afford taxing? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the whole point of taxing. It is not a form of punishment. It is a form of initiative to get people to vaccinate. So if they can't afford taxing, then they will opt to get vaccinated instead, which gives them all the health benefits that they need in the first place. And lastly, they say that the people who are wealthy do not have a lot to lose. So it does not matter that whether they are taxed or not. First of all, the wealthy have something to lose, their money. Do you think that the wealthy people don't care about their money? High taxation will most certainly enrages them. So they will do anything they need and they should in order to protect their money. Now, moving on to the points made by the leader of opposition, it says that it violates the human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, what is more important, the rights to choose or the rights to breathe, to eat, to laugh, to love your loved ones, to live in general? Which one is more important? If we are to gatekeep, solely focus on the freedom of rights, then why is it that the government, the whole world, that we punish people for committing crimes such as murder, stealing, and any acts of criminality? If we are to solely say that we are violating the human rights, then shouldn't it be the case that people who commit any kinds of harm should be able to commit them because it is their right? That's simply not the truth. And moreover, why these things are even criminalized is because it harms society, and that is exactly what people who are not vaccinated does to society. Now, moving on to my first claim, why do we support the motion? Because we want to protect the lives of the vulnerable. Why is this true? Because children have low immunity. They also are more exposed to bacteria in their surrounding, meaning that they're more active. They go out, they play more, and they are more exposed to dirt and such on. They also cannot control their lives, meaning that their lives are controlled by the parents because they are minors. Therefore, we must protect the lives of the vulnerable. So why is it so bad that the lives of the vulnerable are at stake? Because children are dying over things that they can control. This is purely injustice, and the development of children can be stunted due to these sicknesses. If you were to unvaccinate your children, they're more prone to getting diseases, and because when they start to get diseases such as COVID-19, their growth and their health would be stunted due to that. And this form of unvaccination is also an indirect act of murder. I will give you an example of two babies in Sabah who recently died of polio because their parents refused for them to get vaccinated. This is an indirect act of murder, ladies and gentlemen. Why is it so important that we protect the lives of the vulnerable? Because firstly, we want to secure the country's future. To put it very simple, healthy people, healthy country. You can't run a country full of sick people, children, full of sick people, ladies and gentlemen, and children are the future of this country. Secondly, is because we do not want to destroy the young people's bodies. What they experience at childhood will greatly affect how their adulthood will be. Therefore, this does not just apply mentally, but also greatly in their physicality. So if we were to say that children are sick at a young age, they will certainly grow up to have to be more prone to sickness that don't even need vaccination. Thirdly, why it's important is because we want to avoid acts of negligence. government must interfere to avoid acts of criminality, and negligence is exactly what that is. Negligence of the parents that causes their children to get to die is an act of negligence that we must avoid as the government. Second claim, because we want to avoid the reoccurrence of old viruses and stop the spread of new strains. Why is this true? Because unvaccinated children have weaker immunity, and this allows for new viruses to mutate. Vaccination also avoids new viruses in general, because vaccination increases the health immune system. Why is the reoccurrence of old viruses and new strains bad? Because new diseases will occur, and it will undo the hard work that humanity have tried to achieve over the past century. Throughout humanity, we have struggled with diseases. It is our main enemy. And if we were to give this rights to people to refuse vaccination, then we will be undoing the centuries of work that the scientists and doctors have worked so hard to achieve. Secondly, the whole society will be affected by the acts of minority, and this is simply unfair. How could the life of the minority, be dependent on the lives of the few who are ignorant? Thirdly, children will lose their right to a good childhood because of sickness. Because being sick as children, constantly being going to the hospitals, not being able to enjoy your life as a child, will lead you to be to suffer as some trauma because of it. Ladies and gentlemen, for all the reasons stated, the government is proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
Okay, give me a sec. Before I start, am I audible? Education costs money, but then so does ignorance. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm from side opposition, strongly opposed to today's motion. Now, first, I would like to start my speech with my rebuttals against Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. Now, Prime Minister, in his model world of today, has said that the government will tax parents until they are unable to pay for the taxes anymore. Now, I would like to beat up the point. What about and then my prime minister has brought on the point about those who are rich and how they are able to afford to pay the taxes. And the deputy prime minister has said that those who are rich are afraid to lose their money. Well, deputy prime minister from government has failed to acknowledge that rich people often have offshore accounts. This means that they have access to money that are put away and stored away. Not only that, but in this modern world today, if we are going to tax those who are underprivileged, those who cannot afford, what will happen to their daily lives? Keep in mind, these low-income families not only have 1 or 2 children, but they might have multiple amount of children. If we are going to tax them until they are unable to tax anymore, what will happen to their children? Who are going to feed them? The government has not proposed a plan about how are we going to take care of the welfare of the children. We are only looking at the part where the government wants to tax the parents until they are unable to tax. We are just looking at one part of their life, which is vaccinations. Now, I would like to move on to my next rebuttal, which is the prime minister today has said that this taxes is justified because unvaccinated children need extra care. Now, as the government itself, aren't we supposed to care about all children, vaccinated or unvaccinated? Shouldn't this burden fall onto the government to provide such healthcare towards the children? And not only that, but the government has also stated that those parents are negligent because the government has already educated them about vaccination.
POI.
Now, I would like to beat the question. Hold on. I would like to beat the question to the government side. How are you going to prove to us? How are you going to give evidence to us that you have educated all the parents, those who live in rural areas, those who do not have access to education, those who do not have access to internet? How are you going to educate all of them? How are you going to make them to understand, especially those who are from low income families, who cannot afford education, who does not go to school? How are you going to educate them? Give them in simple terms that vaccination are extremely important for them children. The government today has not thought about intersectionality, about lower income parents. They are living in a model world where they think that all parents are educated, all parents receive the same amount of privileges. Well, this is the world we are living in. Reality is that not all parents have access to education. Not all parents are educated. Then the government itself did not say a way in which they are going to propose to us how are they going to educate all parents. And then not only that, but Deputy Prime Minister has talked about that the tax that the government is proposing today is not a form of punishment, but it's an initiative to make parents to vaccinate their children. Now, I like to beat the question. In the model world that your Prime Minister has created today, he has clearly said that he will tax parents until they are no longer to be able to pay the taxes. Isn't this a form of punishment? Cutting off their finances is a form of punishment. Now, I'd like to move on to my Now, I'd like to move on to my argument for today, which is we do not know the effects of vaccines, which is educating parents on why their children should get vaccinated is much more beneficial towards today's motion. Now, the government today has given us the burden, which is a better initiative for children to be vaccinated. Now, I have come up to propose this that we should be educating parents. We should be telling them why is it important for them to vaccinate their children. How is it going to help them in vaccinating their children? Simply putting taxes on parents that do not understand why is it important to get their children vaccinated is not going to do anything, except you are just going to drive parents to not have any children at all, and this will hence lower the population of the country. Not only that, but for my second argument today is that vaccines are not cheap. Yes, some countries do have free vaccines, but that is not the reality of our world today. Some countries do not have free vaccines. Not only that, but vaccines are required to be administered at a hospital, which is far sometimes for people who are living in rural areas. Now, how would the cost of transportation affect them especially if they are from a low income family? The government today has not proposed how the children will be vaccinated, not taking into account those who come from rural areas, those who come from low income families. How will they be vaccinated if they aren't able to afford it? Yes, you give free vaccinations, but are you paying for the fare towards the hospital? Are you paying for the parents to skip their jobs in order to send their children to vaccinations? These are not things that you are considering in today's debate, which is why I said the government today has failed to take care of our children, has failed to bring up a proper model world in which where children can be vaccinated and where this tax is justified. Actually, if you are to justify this tax by the thing, yes.
So in your world that you said that you will be educating everyone, so how would you solve the problem of people who are parents who still cannot go to get vaccinated and everything? It's still the same in your world. The problem still exists. And you already said that we cannot educate all people. So your mechanism is actually worse.
Even if the government cannot prepare the transportation for parents to the hospital, let's say that, which is something that is happening today, even if, how will a tax being mandated towards these parents who already can't afford these things, who already cannot afford to skip their jobs, who already cannot afford transportation to the hospital, how will a tax be beneficial to them? Now, that is the question that you have to beat to yourself today, that I have to be pushed, that the burden has to be pushed onto the government, which is why that I would like to say that the government today has not actually considered all parts of vaccination, not only educating the parents, but also the finance aspect also, which is why today I'm proud to say that that we as an opposition rejects today's motion, which is this House will implement an anti-vaccination tax on parents who refuse to vaccinate their children. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition. To conclude government's substantive case, I welcome Gov Whip. Here. Government Whip, are you here?
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Okay, in imagine not taken care by their just because they believe in some conspiracy theories and tell
Okay, please
me,
stop,
how
stop,
do they
please stop.
so why today the we should implement this anti-vaccination tax to these parents who refuse to vaccinate their children simply because we want to protect children
Sorry,
and to the
Government
best
Whip, please stop for a while. You were
interest.
lagging in the.
Today the government prove to you two things. First, we prove to you that we cater to all the needs of the children in their health, in like in the education. Alright.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I think you are having some internet connection issues in the beginning. I didn't catch. So why don't you just restart off your camera? Okay.
Am I lagging?
Begin whenever. Now you're okay. Now it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it. So yeah, just restart whenever you're ready.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I restart my speech in 3, 2, 1. Imagine the children being unvaccinated, not taken care by their parents just because they believe in some conspiracy theories and they are on their deathbed. Now tell me, how do they live, love, and laugh in that condition? Hence, that is why today the government side wants to implement this anti-vaccination tax to parents who refuse their children for the bestness of their children, simply like the life of the children. And today, we prove to you why we cater to the needs of the children more than their side. And second, we prove to you why we protect their rights, the children's right, more than in their word. So let's look at the clashes that have been happening into this debate. So the first clash, okay, the first is who cater to human rights more, their side or our side. So let's take a look at this clash. So in their word, they protect the rights of the parents, which is that they say that they want to give the parents the right to choose for their children. They want the parents to be able to pick whether they want their children to be vaccinated or not. But ladies and gentlemen, are you still are you still going to stand for the rights of the parents even if the children are dying out of these little diseases just because they don't take all of the vaccines that they are supposed to take in the first place, ladies and gentlemen? So are you still standing for the rights of the parents, seeing that their children are dying, ladies and gentlemen? So hence that is why our side we fight, because we believe that when we implement this anti-vaccination tax, our goal is we want the parents to vaccinate their children. We are encouraging these parents to give the vaccines to these children. Hence, in the end of the day, what we will achieve is that we will get the higher vaccination rate in our country, and hence that is why we cater to human rights more, because our side believe that the rights of the children, the rights of health to the children is more important than the rights of the parents, and that is why we believe that our side then in their word in today's debate. Firstly, their side, they talk about how why the government are taxing people when they can't pay. But two responses. First, this is the whole point, ladies and gentlemen. This is why we want to implement this. It is not that hard because vaccine is free. You see, vaccine is free. We are providing them. We have the subsidy. We bought this vaccine to give to the people, and it is free. So just take it. So what's the problem with taking the vaccine, right? And second response is that we are taxing people until they can't pay anymore. So even if they are rich, even if they have a lot of money, this is going to work in the end of the day, and hence that is why our model, we prove to you our model will work, and we will make these parents vaccinate their children in the end of the day because it will work. And then their leader of opposition talk about human rights, about how it violates human rights. But I have stated to you just now that we cater to human rights more just because we want the children to live. Even if we are in their word, they give the rights to the parents. They want the parents to pick for their children. But what if the children is going to die? So are you going to still stand for the rights of the parents? We think that I would believe that is very, very cruel of you, and that is very unfair for you to actually take away the rights of the children by giving the rights to choose, just the rights to choose for the parents to choose whether the children are supposed to live or not by not giving the vaccine or not. And then they also talk about how if we test them until they are unable to test, in their word, the children in their word is full. They get the food, but they are suffering. And this picture painted by the opposition is very sad to imagine to begin with. While in our word, the children is happy because as what we have stated a lot of times, our goal is we want to make the parents, we want the parents to vaccinate the children. So in the end of the day, we get this vaccine, and when they get this vaccine, they do it to themselves, and hence they could buy the needs, they could fulfill the needs of the children. They can buy the food, they can buy all of the needs to make the children comfortable to live with them. So yeah, this is the next. They also talk how we can people these tests. But ladies and gentlemen, this isn't even included into this debate. And vaccine education is a whole new issue. But still, even if we are to debate about this thing, I would say cater more to this issue. When in fact, in the long run. So when people take vaccine, when parents take vaccine, in the long run, what they will know that this their children is better when they take vaccine, right? Other than that, other people will believe that okay, this vaccine works actually. So in the long run, this education is we could still achieve this education that we wanted to achieve in the first place. And hence, our side cater more to this issue, even if we are to debate about the vaccine education. And then they talk about how vaccines are not cheap. But ladies and gentlemen, note that this is not the problem into this debate. Because why? Because we have subsidy, like what I have stated. We already told you that we bought like a lot of vaccines for all of the people, for all of the people in this country, and we have
Has Gafwip completed speaking? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Gafwip. Opwip to close the debate. Here.
Am I audible right now?
Yes.
Okay. So, greetings to the honorable adjudicator, precise and acute timekeeper, and fellow members of the floor. So, the opposition leader has stated the definition of what our burden for today's debate is, and has given her first point. The deputy minister has given the second and third point, and I, as the opposition whip, will be rebutting all the points presented by the government side, as well as summarizing all of the points that were brought forth by my honorable team. So, moving on into the Prime Minister's points, I would like to clarify that he did not state what exactly the extra taxes that will be the extra tax money will be used for exactly. He did not specify whether it was going to be used for government. It was going to go for government funding, or it's going to move towards healthcare. It's not necessarily specified. Next, they have also failed to mention whether each diseases that are associated with vaccines that are given to most children are going to be count as rates for each and every one of them. So we're not exactly sure how much they are being taxed. Exactly, they have not given a proper definition as to how much they are taxing the parents. No, thank you. So moving on to some of these other points. So they have mentioned that unvaccinated children do get extra care. Sure, the parents are already handling that extra care that you are mentioning. So if we're putting more money and tax into their plate, wouldn't that mean that they're going to be spending more? You're essentially impending the livelihoods of all for both the children and the parent itself. And next, so the implementation of taxing for unvaccinated children isn't necessarily a cure or it's more of a prevention, because there will always be skeptics. There will always be people that doubt the effectiveness of vaccines. There will always be people who still don't think that it's safe for their children. So what we're doing here is simply just going to rile up them. It's going to encourage them to keep doing these things. So it's not necessarily a good alternative for what we've presented so far, especially by the second minister. And again, certain diseases like polio and rubella sometimes cannot be found in other countries as well. Sure, it is prominent in certain countries, but it's not necessarily can be found in some other countries as well. And moving on to certain things that the whip has mentioned. So again, not everyone has the privilege of choice due to their upbringing, because not everyone is raised the same. Not everyone has the same background. Most people aren't able to provide for their family, and now they have to now they have to pay for more taxes especially. it's going to be detrimental to their already crippling livelihoods. And they've mentioned again that something that the second minister has rectified, and that is vaccines aren't free everywhere. Some places, vaccines aren't necessarily a commodity. It's something that has to be acquired with money too. It's not something that's provided by the government sometimes. And so, how do you propose that people who aren't able to provide for their families these vaccines, how are they going to now deal with the already damaging taxation laws that you're proposing? And as the whip has painted us as some kind of desolate, unhopeful world that we live in, because it seems that we're opting for choice over opting for choice and the right to choose over the right to, as the second minister has put it, the right to breathe. But it seems that the world that the government has painted is rather utopian, because it seems that everyone just is able to provide for themselves. Everyone just seems to be able to do whatever they need to take just to take care of themselves. But as we've seen in this world, it's not necessarily that bright colors and rainbows. You see, it's very much something that's not exactly hopeful for everyone, because everyone, like I said, have different backgrounds. And moving on, so now I'm moving on to summarize the points of my team. So the violation of human rights. So like they said, as to again clarify, as in my POI earlier, the low mortality rate of certain diseases is not to justify the deaths of them. It's to not justify the tax given to them, because just because like a few number of people are most certainly dying from the disease doesn't mean that we should be taxing everyone else a certain rate, because they're already dealing with certain problems already. And as the PM has mentioned, it is transitioning into an endemic. We're not necessarily dealing with a huge problem. We can still mend with this with what we already have. And we can't be pushing people to get vaccine if they don't want them, especially again when they're coming from a very poor background. And to repeat the point, we're just encouraging them with these taxes, that we're encouraging them to even more not take vaccines, because some people, they might pay, some of the richer families would be able to pay for it, but some of the poorer families are still not good. They're, at the end of the day, since we're drying their coffers, their wallets, right? They're still not able to provide for their family, one, and they're still not able to purchase for the vaccine. So we're essentially financially crippling them. So that concludes the summarizing of my points and summarizing of my team points, and that concludes my arguments. Thank you.
Thank you. To conclude opposition's case as a whole, I welcome op reply. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we have seen that the government side has failed to consider all of its citizens, despite claiming to have the benefits of the children in their mind. Today's motion is this House will implement an anti-vaccination tax on parents who refuse to vaccinate their children. The model world created by the government side, it does not satisfy the opposition today. In this utopian world that the government has created, in their mind, they bear only those who are privileged, those who are able to be paying for these vaccinations, those who are able to skip on their jobs. They are not thinking their citizens as a whole. Not only that, the government today, I will break down each and every one of the government's arguments for today. Firstly, the government said that Firstly, the government said that there are less educated parents and they do not believe in vaccinations. Now the government itself has not told us today how are they going to be educating these parents. Not only that, government today has also said that this tax is justified because unvaccinated children need extra care. We can see today that the government only prefers to think about those who are privileged. They only prefer to think about those who are able to get vaccinated. They are not thinking about the citizen as a whole. If these parents aren't able to take care of their children, and then if these parents aren't able to afford vaccination, they are taxed. Not only that, but if their children get sick and they are required to go to a government hospital, the government said that they cannot be paying the same price because it is unfair. Ladies and gentlemen, we can see today that we have such a cruel government. They are not taking care of our children. They are only prioritizing those who have been vaccinated. Not only that, but the government today has also said that that this tax today is not a form of punishment, and yet we see in their model world that they are not giving parents any choices to vaccinate their children. They are pushing parents towards their wits end until they are unable to pay anymore, and with no money in their coffers. Ladies and gentlemen, how are they going to get their children vaccinated? How are they going to pay for the transportation? How are they able to skip work if they can no longer afford to pay taxes? How are we going to ensure that they are able to pay for the basic necessity? Not only that, but WIP from the government has also said that it is not that hard. What's the problem? We have already given them free vaccinations. Yet, WIP opposition has not been listening to my arguments in the first place. I've already said getting vaccination is not only about injecting the vaccines into your body. It's about a trip to the hospital. It is about the job that you have to skip. It is about taking time off the work that, of course, you will be paid daily. You will be skipping a job. You will have to take the bus. You have to take the train. You have to pay for your petrol. These are things that the government today has not thought about. If these parents aren't able to get their children vaccinated, then their children cannot go to a government hospital because according to the government, it is unfair that they have to have extra care. Their government today is not thinking about the children. They are thinking about how are they going to tax these parents so that they are going to bid to what the government says. They are not thinking about vaccination in a whole. They are thinking about, if you don't do what I want you to do, then you will have to suffer the consequences. This is not about taking care of the children. The government today has put up a great show showing that they want to cater to children. They want to keep the children safe, and yet they have not told us as a whole how are they going to keep the children safe. How are they going to ensure that all children are actually vaccinated? By implementing taxes, you are not going to be able to you are not going to get all children vaccinated because you are not educating parents on why they should get their children vaccinated. You are not thinking about the intersectionality. In this case, those who have come from lower privilege, those who are not educated. The government today are not thinking about children as a whole. They are not thinking of all of their citizens, which is why their case today does not stand. Not only that, the whip from government has also said that children are dying. In their utopian world, children have been vaccinated. They are happy. But we have to look at the reality. Mortality rates for contagious diseases are not high in children because children in itself has a higher immunity. Getting vaccines just be that you are exposing yourself to a dead virus. Because we have a high mortality rate, because we have a low mortality rate, it does not justify a tax. It does not justify why we should push parents to their absolute limits to get their children vaccinated. This case, the motion today simply does not stand because the government has failed to tell us how are they going to make sure that all children are vaccinated. Just by having a tax, you are not going to push parents to get their children vaccinated. You will only push parents to kill their children, not having money for basic necessity because you have taxed them until they are unable to pay anymore. If they are unable to pay anymore, means they are unable to afford basic necessity, such as food. Where are you putting your children in your utopian world? Where are these children going to get homes, food, education if they do not have money because their parents are simply unable to pay the taxes? If you are going to talk about implementing taxes, then you should also talk about how some privileged people are able to get away because they also have other places where they can keep their finances, such as offshore accounts, Swiss banks. You are not thinking of the world in a reality. You are just thinking of a utopian world. Everyone is honest, where everyone is educated, where everyone is privileged. You are not taking care of the children. You're only thinking about getting children vaccinated. And that is why the motion today does not stand. Which is why I, as side opposition, wholeheartedly disagree with today's motion, which is this House will implement an anti-vaccination tax on parents who refuse to vaccinate their.
Thank you. Please be reminded that reply speeches are 4 minutes long only. The judge will not take into account any material that comes after 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Okay, thank you. Government reply to conclude the debate. Here.
Thank you. I'll start my reply in 3, 2, 1. The opposition side thinks that we all live in a jungle where vaccination is hard and no one is able to get the vaccination. But ladies and gentlemen, look at the status quo. Look at the reality that if you are able to get healthcare, then you are able to get the vaccination. And what they are looking at are the minorities. But what we are focusing on, the government, is the majority of people that we would like to take care of. Some final remarks coming from the opposition side. The opposition side talk a lot about violation of rights, but we here say that it is important that the government regulates the right of children, because it is not fair to let parents determine what will happen in a children's life. And the opposition side today does not at all understand our mechanism on the tax. They keep saying that the rich can pay the tax, the rich can let the children not get vaccinated, but our mechanism already stated, and this is the final time I'm going to say that when you are rich, you are going to be taxed until you cannot pay, and when you are poor, you will also be taxed until you cannot pay the tax, the state tax, ladies and gentlemen. So please understand carefully our mechanism, so all their arguments attacking our model shall fall into this debate. And they also question about where the tax money will go. We believe that this is not relevant into this debate, because the function of the tax in the first place is to make the parents vaccinate their child, and we prove that vaccination is very important based on all of the speakers that have stated before me. And some question that I will answer in the reply speech arena. First is who achieved the aim better. As I stated before in my Prime Minister's speech, our aim is to ensure all children to get vaccinated. We want a fully vaccinated country with low mortality rates because of diseases such as polio and COVID. So our initiative, we making the tax that we want that if they do not get vaccinated, then something will happen. This is a better initiative than just letting them not get the vaccine and let the diseases spread. But from the opposition side, what they are proposing is that education, and they said that education, give them education, and they would go get vaccine. But ladies and gentlemen, education does not work at all. We told people not to murder someone, but murder cases still happen. Education is not sufficient. And the government already said that we already have the education. So why not just add the education and the taxation, add it together to make the best mechanism that the government is proposing, ladies and gentlemen. This proves, as this is a policy debate, the government policy is way better. Ladies and gentlemen, the next question that I would like to answer is the importance of vaccination. We would like to clear that vaccination is important for the majority. It is not fair because some parents does not want to vaccine their children, that others will be affected, others will be afraid that they will get long gone diseases such as polio, ladies and gentlemen. And what the opposition said, that the mortality rate of diseases is not high, and they said because of that the children should not get vaccination. Ladies and gentlemen, what the opposition is trying to suggest is that we make the mortality rate higher. They do not want the children to get vaccinated because they say that, this is not a problem. Just let them do not get vaccinated, and we look at the mortality rate because of these diseases. We believe that the opposition today is clearly lost and clearly does not know what the importance of vaccination really is, and the government is trying to make the best of the country. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you everyone. Please just give me a minute. Stay here. Cross the floors, talk to each other if you want to. And once I have the results, we will talk about the debate. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Excuse me, don't leave this meeting yet.
Okay, everyone. I hope you can hear me. We are ready to start the feedback session. Okay. As I am also tabbing and edge scoring this tournament, I will not be looking frequently at my phones. So if any of you have any questions, please approach me during lunch or approach me at any time after the tournament if you want more feedback. Okay, I apologize in advance if I don't get back to you as quickly as possible due to other commitments. But here it goes. I think it was a above average debate, and it was a really close debate. The margins were less than 2. The reason is because I think both teams prioritize too much on the version of the world that they are building as opposed to engaging more with the other side. But that's general feedback, and we'll get back into that later. Eventually, I saw this debate as a gov debate, so I gave the win to government on a very close margin. There are a couple of reasons why. So first things first, I think opposition's general push against government is largely on two fronts. The first is government do not show the roadmap into how children will get vaccinated. What is the incentive structure for children to get vaccinated? And B, we have other alternatives to protect children. The issue I have with these pushes is first, I think in government's model, while this model wasn't as fleshed out or as detailed, I think it was clear enough that the tax would be heavy onto individuals up to the point that they either change or they lose all their money. Just give me a second. Okay, where was I? Yes, text. So I think, granted, throughout the rest of the speeches, you hear explicit material about how this is the incentive structure for individuals to get their children vaccinated, because more likely than not, individuals will get these children vaccinated if it comes at the cost of their own wealth, right? And failure to do so will result in you losing a lot of money in a very short period of time. While it is not practical, I don't think opposition criticized this model on its impracticality. I think opposition prioritized more on trying to show why this model isn't sufficient to reach the roadmap, which I don't think opposition did successfully, given the fact that Gov talked in depth about why this is an incentive structure for people to one. Then opposition says that there are a lot of poor individuals that cannot afford to be taxed and they will suffer a lot. uh, I think the first response I get from government is that their priority is not the welfare of the parents, nor is it the financial capacity of the people we're talking about. It's about getting individuals vaccinated who are at a critical juncture in this stage, right? So I think that was Gov's model. So while opposition is correct in saying that there will be people who are poorer as a result of this tax, government already says that they don't care. Their priority is the children. So I think what opposition needed to do at this stage is not to further exaggerate and say that these people will get poorer, is to tell me why should I care that these people are getting poorer, and that these people and the fact that these people are getting poorer is more important than children not than children getting vaccinated. I think government was able to show that the children are individuals who are vulnerable. They're individuals who interact a lot with other children, and these are individuals that are innocent and whatnot. So this group of people deserve the most amount of protection that government can give. That is why they should be a priority. If I contrast this material with opposition, I'm not hearing why opposition feels the fiscal capacity of these parents is more important. But this is also in the worst case, because in the best case, the fear of getting taxed heavily will incentivize them to get vexed, right? As what government told you. So for most people, what they will do if they are facing taxation is that they will vaccinate their kids. The parents that still don't want to do are individuals that can afford to do so, like what government told you, or in the most worst case, they are individuals who are poor and still want to get taxed even though because they don't want to vaccinate their kids. So these are the parents that will suffer. And while it is regrettable, I'm uncertain from opposition's point of view why this group of people is more important. That is the marginal difference as to why I think government won. Because I think opposition argued why parents will suffer and what the financial strain towards the parents will be better than government managed to argue on the vaccination of children. But I think in concluding your harm, you did not take the extra step that government took. The second is, you talked about alternatives, right? So the next question is this the most effective way to get children vaccinated? So I think when government tries to tell you that they've tried other things and it's not worked to such a scale, opposition says that things like education won't work because there's different levels of parents. There are parents that are not educated, there are parents that don't understand. So if they are not receiving, if even if they receive this information, they will not be able to completely understand, and this policy will fail. The problem is government's reliance on this material is only ancillary. The primary focus is taxing people who don't vaccinate their kids, whether they understand the reason or not, or whether they are educated on these issues. Whatever education the government provide, it is complementary to this policy. And even worse, I think opposition also uses education as an argument when they say that we don't need to vaccinate what we tax unvaccinated. We need to educate these parents, and we need to provide these parents with the necessary information, which runs into the same problem that you had with government. How are you going to educate these parents when some of these